these are not professional speakers. These are people that are members of your community, and they are getting over any stage fright they may or may not have. I know these ones on some theater, hey. But they're dealing with their own nerves and anxiety, and they're giving up their own personal time to share knowledge, and that's what community is all about. So please be kind, be generous, be attentive, and we're going to hear from our first speaker. Her name is Victoria, and she's going to be talking about rebooting your resume.
Working for a woman-owned company. We highly value diversity, and we actually work in the recruitment and hiring and staffing spaces to help other companies value diversity as well. We work to de-bias the hiring process, all that good stuff. And so we've done a lot of research on what makes a good resume. So let's just talk a little bit about what even is a resume. So it was invented in 1482. That was a long time ago. Does anybody know who invented the resume? I'll give you a hint, he painted the Mona Lisa. That's correct. Leonardo da Vinci invented the first ever CV, resume, whatever you want to call it, in 1482. He was 30 years old when he did it. You guys, it's 2019. Why are we still using this? You know, it's insane. I mean, recruiters spend on average about 6 seconds looking at your resume. That's it. That's all you get. 6 seconds to grab their attention and make an impression that lasts, to get them to keep reading. And I have looked at a lot of resumes, you guys. Some of them for less than 6 seconds because it is too cluttered, it is too messy, I don't know what's going on. I can't understand what they're trying to tell me. So, the other important thing to know is around 20% of recruiters actually read your cover letters. So, that first page that you spend a lot of time stressing out over, that you want to make sure you sound professional, you sound eloquent, very few people actually read it. Sorry to say. I have written quite a few cover letters in my time, and when I learned this, I was depressed for about 3 days because that was about the amount of time I had spent working on one cover letter. All right? So it was not a pleasing statistic for me to hear, but that is the harsh truth, and it's important that we all understand the truth about resumes. So let's talk about some things that you really should not do. All right? This is, again, speaking from personal experience. I have looked at resumes that have all of these things that I'm telling you to not do. If you want to do these things, fine, but I'm not going to say I told you so, but also I told you so. So first off, don't use colored fonts, y'all. I have seen people use resumes that have this like weird, like blue or even red font. What are they thinking? I don't know. Stick with black. Stick with black and white, all right? If you want to have a nice colorful header, that's fine. Make sure that it's relatively small. You don't want to take up too much space that you need in order to explain why you are a valuable person to this company, right? You want to save as much space as possible for the meat of the product. You're the product and your experience is the meat. You don't want to clutter the page with graphics. I've seen a lot of resumes that have, you know, little graphics on the side with almost like sliding scales of where their expertise is with different kinds of skills. So they may have one for Salesforce, they may have one for coding, they may have one for UI UX design. Don't. It clutters the resume, all right? They know what they're looking for, and that is just kind of a distraction. I personally have really bad ADD, and I spend way too much time looking at it, and then I forget that I'm looking at a resume, and then I have to bring myself back to reality and start the whole thing over again. So it's better to just not risk it. Keep it real simple, keep it real upfront, and this is what I know how to do. We don't recommend having any more than 4 sections, not including your objective at the very top, right? No more than 4 being education, experience, leadership, and other, whether they're honors, whether they're volunteer situations, you know, whatever you want to do. Keep it to 4 or less because it gets, again, too long. You only have 6 seconds, you guys. You have 6 seconds to get them to continue reading your resume. Make the most out of that 6 seconds. Don't give them 4 pages to go through. Even if you have 4 pages worth of experience, I promise you, you can narrow it down to just 1 page of relevant terms that they need to know about you so that they pick up the phone and they call you in for an interview, all right? Another thing that drives me crazy is buzzwords. You guys, the number of resumes I have read with the word synergy in it drives me up a wall, okay? If you're using just synergy, if you're using artificial intelligence, and I work for a company that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I have read resumes that have that in there like 4 or 5 times, and I'm like, nope, can't do it, not doing it. I don't think you know what it is because you're using it too often, and it's like, methinks the lady doth protest too much, you know? You're overcompensating, and I don't want to know what you're overcompensating for, so throwing you off to the side. And lastly, do not keep it to yourself before you send it in. Have other people look at it. Have other people look at your resume. Have them give you feedback, whether it be friends, coworkers, former colleagues, your parents, your siblings, your ex-lovers. I don't care. I don't know what your relationship is with your ex-lovers, but if it's good, have them look at your resume, because chances are they will critique you with no shame. All right? We all have an ex. We've all been there. It's fine. Chances are they can give you some valuable feedback. So now that I've told you what not to do, and granted there is a lot you should not do, these are the main ones. Let's talk about what you should do. First, you need to evaluate whether or not you should use a serif or a non-serif font. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Serif versus non-serif. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, for those who don't know, serif fonts have that cute little tail down the bottom, right? Like Times New Roman, classic serif font. Non-serif is, Comic Sans, cringe. Don't use Comic Sans, that's not what I'm saying. Do not use Comic Sans on a resume. But for certain roles, a serif or a non-serif may be more appropriate. It just kind of depends on if you're applying for a more managerial or supervisor kind of role, go with the serif. Very elegant, timeless look. If you're applying for more of an entry-level role, non-serif is fine. We don't know why this is. We have done studies on this. We don't know what the correlation is. But when you use a serif font for a higher level role, great. If you use a serif font for a lower level role, doesn't work as well. We don't know. We don't know. We've done studies on it though. I promise you that's just a thing that happens. People are strange. We're mysteries. It's fine. Your objective needs to be concise. You need to explain what you have done in the past and how it correlates to what you want to do. All right? And it may be a stretch, you guys. It may be a stretch to make that connection, but you have to make that connection. That objective sentence is going to be what they spend those first 6 seconds on. If you don't catch their attention in the first 6 seconds, you're getting tossed in the bin. All right? So work on that objective sentence. Make sure it tells them what you want to do and why you know how to do it and why it matters to you, All right, this is an interesting one. So who here has ever experienced fun little microaggressions in the workplace? Yeah, even if you're not raising your hand, you probably have. It's okay, we're all people, But microaggressions also happen in the interviewing and resume review process. A lot of the times, whether the recruiter or hiring manager is a man or a woman or something in between, or none of the above, they will see a woman's name and think they are immediately less qualified than the other men in that stack. Why? Because of history, and I could go on about why for hours, but that's not why I'm here. We all know why, all right? So the way to best get in the door, first initial, last name. That's all you need, all right? Forget the first name. You will introduce yourself when they invite you in for the interview, all right? And at that point, it's too late. You got them on the hook, and you can reel them in, all right? But first initial, last name, it's a great way to help overcome that bias that a lot of us experience when applying for jobs. Next, beat your own drum. But, be chill about it, We are all very capable people. We all have very valuable skills. Don't be afraid to shine bright. Don't be afraid to be confident in what you know how to do, but also don't oversell yourself because you may bite off more than you can chew. Evaluate your skills honestly and critically, and express that in your resume without, again, biting off more than you can chew. I've done that before, and it sucked. Cater to the job you're applying for. So, who here maybe knows how to do more than one thing as far as tech goes? Coding, UI, UX design, front-end, back-end. Right. So, if you're applying for a front-end design job, right, you don't want to have your resume look more like you're a back-end coder. Right? You want your resume to cater to the job you're applying for. And don't get me wrong, we all love editing our resume over and over again. But but you have to do it. I know it's a pain in the butt, but you have to do it. Cater your resume to the job that you are applying for, and it will have much higher rates of success and callbacks, all right? Even if that means cutting words out that are not in the job description. I know it sounds so basic, but it is amazing what a difference it makes. I might burp, I'm sorry. I ate 2 tacos. Okay. So look at your job description, see what key terms are in that job description. Mirror your resume based off of those key terms, and boom. Remember, you have 6 seconds or less to get their attention. I guarantee you that recruiter is scanning for those keywords in your resume. Stick them in there, make them a little bold, give them their own section, whatever you have to do, but that's what they're skimming for, is those key phrases that they put in that job description. Now, if you are a front-end developer, if you are a coder, if you are an app developer, attach a link to your portfolio whenever possible. All right, most of the time we are sending our resumes in digitally via an email. Sometimes they'll give you an opportunity to attach any relevant links. Do it, please do it, because they're going to ask for it eventually. And your portfolio says a lot more about you than your resume does. Also, it's usually more interesting and fun for them to look at. I don't care how great your resume is, we're all bored to death by them, and they would much rather see what you've actually created, what you've actually done. They get a much more complete picture of who you are as an employee and who you are as a person. Next, so we've all had that email address. I have one. What is it? B-Ball Superstar 93. Don't put that on a resume. Come on, guys. Don't do that to yourself. Even if you have to create a brand new one, make a professional sounding email address to put on your resume. Even if it's just your first initial and your last name and maybe a few digits at the end at Gmail, at Yahoo, at AOL, if anyone still uses it. That's what you need to have on your resume. Do not have your middle school email address. We all make mistakes in middle school. It's okay. Don't tell your employer about it, though. You need to check that twice a day. You don't know when they're going to reach out to you. Check in the morning, check in the afternoon, check in the evening if you're bored, but check it regularly because you never know when you're going to get that contact and that reach out to say, hey, I want you to come in for an interview. I want to hear more about what you do. You also need to let them know what your preferred method of contact is. If you prefer to be called, if you prefer to be emailed, if you prefer a text, if you prefer to be reached out to on Twitter, if you prefer them to shoot you a Facebook message. I don't recommend those, but if that's what you want to do, tell them. And so that they know, okay, if I call her, that's when she will most likely answer, right? Or they. Next, we want to clean up our social media. Ladies and thems, gotta clean up our social media. I myself have never had the best social media presence. I am a fan of goofy Facebook profile photos. For example, number 1, that is not a very professional Facebook photo, you guys, but that was my Facebook profile photo for quite some time. No wonder I didn't get a job. Then, switched it to number 2. I went to a fun little event called Les Prom. I did a lip sync battle. I was dressed up as Bruno Mars. You can obviously see the resemblance. How can you tell that that is not Bruno? I mean, that's obviously Bruno, right? And that was likely after I'd already gotten a job. However, if I was looking for a job currently, number 3 is the one that I would be using. Clean, I look sane, I look normal. It is the biggest illusion ever pulled off in the world, but there it is. Magically, guys. All right, we've talked a little bit about bias. How do you combat it? How do you deal with this world that we are living in that assumes that you are less qualified simply because of who you identify as, who you are? How do you do it? Well, there's a few ways. First, you can do your research. You can find companies who actually encourage and accept diversity, like mine. There are companies out there who are working proactively to encourage diversity in their hiring process. They are working to bring on more women of color, more people of color, more non-binary, more LGBTQ people into their company and into their community. Find them, and you will have a much better chance of actually being called in for an interview. I'm sorry to say there are still companies out there like, Chick-fil-A that don't really give a crap about LGBTQ people. I personally would not want to work for them. However, there are companies that do. And I was lucky enough that I found one of those. Be aware of any biases in your resume. Do you have experience working for a competitor? Could you play that in your favor? Or is that going to kind of do you in the end? Be prepared for that. Be prepared to be asked about sorry, I'm fucking burps down you guys. I feel like a 50-year-old man right now. Okay. If you graduated from the same school as the interviewing manager, great. Talk about some stuff that happened on campus. Talk about some events. Talk about football. Talk about softball. Talk about basketball. Whatever you have to do to kind of soften them up a little bit. Interviewing managers are usually very tired. They've been doing interviews all day. They're exhausted. They looked at resumes. They don't actually want to talk to you. But as soon as they learn that you graduated from the same school, now you have something to talk about. Now you have an in. It's a shame that we have to play these games, but that's the way the world is, all right? So let's play the game well, yeah? Next, volunteering with certain groups or political parties. For example, if you've worked on a campaign for a certain politician, you don't know if the person you're interviewing with is aligned with or against that politician. Maybe throw the politician's name out. Just explain that you volunteered to, help build a certain individual's presence in the political world. There are ways to word it without, shooting yourself in the foot, guys. So do it. Don't give yourself as many roadblocks as possible. Clear the road as much as possible. Make yourself seem like the most open and accepting and just wonderful ray of sunshine that this person has ever seen, and they'd be doing themselves a favor to hire you, because they would be. They would be doing themselves a favor to hire you. All right, I look around this room and I see a bunch of amazing, intelligent people. I've talked to maybe 3 of you, but I can see it in all of your eyes that you are very capable, you are very intelligent, you are very empowered, and I want you to use that as often as you can, all right? Learn the company. What's the company about? There's a great website, LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce. They actually have done the research for you. You go to their website and you can look at the business directory and they will show you a list of companies who care about diversity. What? Someone's done it for you? You have no reason not to care. Yay! So go to the website, check it out. They have a lot of cool other resources too. Really cool people, really cool organization. Find out the history of the company. When did they make the news, if ever? Why did they make the news? Have they ever been involved in scandals regarding, sexual, assaults and shady shit, Have they? Is that something you want to be a part of? Have they made changes? Have they made changes since that happened? Did that make the news? Learn about who you're going to work for, you guys. Don't be afraid, it's okay. This is the age of the smartphone. You have the world of information in your pocket. I don't have it in my pocket, but you probably have it in your pocket. Who is interviewing you? Real quick site search on the company side. You can find out who you're probably talking to. It's probably one of 5 to 10 people. Just kind of brush up on who you might be talking to. It's totally acceptable. They know about you. Don't you think it's fair for you to know about them? Oh, how the turntables. All right, that's the office quote, sorry. Once you're in the door, right, read the room. Is this person a very jovial, kind of laid back, kind of chilled dude bro? Or is this person very professional, very uptight, very, vertical for some reason? Then match their energy, match that person's vibe, and be honest. If you're nervous, be like, hey, I'm really excited to be here, but I'm a little bit nervous. So I apologize if I stumble over my words or anything like that. They'll appreciate it, because you're being honest right from the start. It's okay to be nervous. You're interviewing for a job. No one likes that. Obviously, dress business casual unless stated otherwise. If they want you to dress real fancy, dress real fancy. If they want you to wear shorts and a t-shirt, wear shorts and a t-shirt. Because they may make you run laps in the interview. You don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. If they haven't told you, ask. Ask them, is business casual appropriate? Would you like me to dress up or dress down? Just wear clothes to the interview. That's all that is. Just wear clothes at the very least. Prepare your questions ahead of time. You need to know what you're getting into. What is the pay? What are the benefits? Negotiate if you need to. Again, know your worth. Know what you are capable of and what that is worth in today's economy, okay? Do not undersell yourself. We have got to fucking make a difference, okay? You've got to fucking stand up for ourselves. People are going to constantly try and step on us and make us feel like we're not worth what we're worth. Fuck that. Get paid what you're worth getting paid, all right? Ask to meet some people you would work with if you got hired. Get a feel for the vibe. Get a feel for whether or not they like working there. It's easy enough. Company culture, team building. Find out more about the culture. I'm almost done, I promise. Almost done. Find out if they do team building exercises. You want to know if you're going to get to know your team. It's easy enough. Are you going to be going to meetings and conferences? Are you going to be traveling for the company? You want to know that too. Most importantly, what does this person need to contribute in order to be successful to the business? All right? Do not forget to ask that. What is the one thing that I would need to do if I were hired in order to be the biggest contributor to this business? That is an important question to ask because it may surprise you. Then find out what the next steps are. Am I going to get an email? Am I going to get a call? Should I call you? It's fine. Following up, I know, I said I'm almost done. I'm almost done, I swear, I swear. I'm just going to breeze through it real quick. Also, if you want this to be sent to you, find me after this. I will email it to you. It's okay. Always follow up, either later that day or first thing in the morning the next day. Don't be afraid to ask for the job so they know that you want it, especially if you're an introvert. Who's an introvert? Me sometimes. Great. So make sure that they know that you want the job. Sometimes our minds change, so let them know that no, you still want the job. Always be professional. Thank them for their time. Thank them for talking to you. If they have any other questions they wanted to ask, that's the chance to do it. You guys can do this. Ladies and lems and everything in between, you guys can do this. I know that you can because I've done it. You gotta stick together. Let's get what we're worth, you know? And like I said, if you have any questions, find me after, and I will send this to you, and you got this. Seriously, you got this.
Sorry for like the whole like sheep herders cloak thing. I just want to make sure that we have time for mentorship afterwards. So when our lightning talks start running a little bit long, I'm gonna start using my threatening face. All right, so next up we have Cece, who's gonna talk to us about code interviews.
We run a lot of meetup at the same time. I personally, I go to the lightning talk that's happening every first Monday of the month. So it is a very open place that you can talk about anything. So that's my shameless plug. Now that's over, I want to talk about code interviews. So code interviews is after you have your awesome resume, this is what's going to come next. It's, well, if you apply for a software engineering job. So this is includes online assessments or over the phone coding sessions, or just on-site whiteboardings. So I want to talk about this not because I love them, but I have personally been through tens of these, and I personally conduct over hundreds of mostly phone screens. There is a formula to this. So if there's a formula to this, you can find the formula and you can beat it. So I found it like to find a way to beat it, it's easier from the other way around. What do interviewers want? So they want you to like them. So this is really cliche, but interview goes both ways. You interview for the job, you also interview the company. So I find this thought made me a lot less nervous. So I always tell myself that before I go into an interview. But if this is not enough for you, I want to tell you the interviewers want you to succeed. So I wrote this deck with my husband last night, and he said this is total bullshit. Yeah, I'm not saying there's no assholes in this industry. Unfortunately, there are. But I want to say, no interviewer walked into the conference room and thinking, I hope this candidate suck. No one think that way. And I am glad I don't have to say it because the previous person has said it, because we're so tired of interview. We don't want to interview. We want this to be over. We want to hire you and get this done. So we want you to succeed. We really do. So what's the next thing interviewer want? Really, it's the technique. That's a real part of what people think about interviews. But really, we want to make sure we want to work with you. So if you think about it, the people who interview you, it's either your coworker, your future coworker, your future manager, or your future reports. So we want to make sure that we can work with you. So if you think about a real work setting, if you give them a project, there's two parts that's not say qualified, but that make me want to work with you. The first is technical and it's non-technical. Technical is basically like, really depends on the project. Like if you are front-end developer, you probably are expected to know some JavaScript. If you're back-end, you probably need to know some data structure algorithm, stuff like that. But on top of that, it's very important that we can work with you, which means that we can communicate with you. So if you get a project and you got stuck, what would you do? You will ask your coworkers help. And that is what we want to see in the interview sessions. So as I said, interviewers want you to succeed. So please use them as a resource. Use them as your coworker. So when you got stuck, when you forget some syntax, I mean, in a real life situation, you're probably going to Google it. But since you don't have Google, just ask your interviewer. Use them as a Google. So that is, and also like when you finish your project, when you give it a project, you have to communicate what the project is really about. When you finish your project, you have to tell other people how to use your stuff. And these are communication, and this is exactly what we want to see in an interview. And this is the non-technical part, which is a lot more important than people expect. I would say a lot of people actually get hired because they are okay technically, but they are so great personal, communication-wise that we hire them. We think it's teachable, we hire them. But on top of that, I want to talk about an attitude that you should have. It's that you can do whatever you want. A lot of people think, like going to a whiteboard session and think, there is a solution and I'm going to find it. This is not how it works. It is not how it works in real life. The real life is you have a problem, and how do you want to solve it? I don't know. Like you just find a way to solve it, and this is software engineering. This is you have a problem, solve it. So this is very subtle difference, but it's I think you have to take the step to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. So remember that going in. So now let's talk, but there's ways for you to, easier get to the solving parts, like a formula for you to solve the problem easier. So what I break it down to 3 parts. The first part is before you code, you have to prepare to code, and the actual code. And then after you code, like if you have a project, after you code, you're not gonna say, I'm done. Like you probably have some QA, some validation, stuff like that. And so does your actual whiteboard interview. This 3 steps you should follow. So the first step is prepare to code. And I want to say this is the most important step of all. And this is the part I see a lot of people skip. I would say like probably like 80% of people will just jump in and then start to write code, like start to write their function definition and then start to write code. And most of the time they don't do well. So plan ahead before you start to code. And this is exactly the same as you got a project. If I say, please make me a to-do app, like you will not just start coding, right? You'll probably say, what kind of to-do app? Do you want a web interface or do you want an app on the phone? Or like you ask questions. So this is exactly the same. You ask questions. So let's say, go through a great example. Let's say if my question to you is, you have an array of strings and you want to return me the most appear string. So first of all, like you want to confirm the problem, because this is actually kind of vague. Sure, like I give you an example. There's an apple, banana, coconut, banana, apple, and there's 3 apples, so you want to return apple. But if you think about, is this true? What if I give you nothing? What if I give you an array that contains nothing? So what should you return? This is a question you should ask the interviewer. And a lot of time, interviewers are actually looking for this. Because a lot of time when you give them the project, it is very vague. Like, honestly, like your stakeholder probably doesn't know what they want. You have to go figure out what exactly they are talking about. So definitely ask a lot of questions to clarify what exactly they want. For me, like the most basic thing for me, it's easiest to just clarify what's the input and what's the output. What's the type of your input? A lot of time, especially if you use JavaScript or like I write Python, we don't have types, so I kind of skip that part. But it's important to know like what kind of types you are expecting, your input and your output. And basically what you're trying to find is how do you get from your input to your output. And then the next step is going through an example. Usually the problem will come with an example. Like I give you the example, there's apples, bananas, and coconuts. So work through it. So for me, if I look at this problem, I will say, okay, first I see an apple, so I will have some kind of counter that I keep. So I say, oh, here's apple 1. There's a banana, okay, banana 1. Oh, here comes another apple. I'll increase the apple to 2, and so on. And at the end, I will see, oh, there's 3 apples, and that's the most I got, so I'm going to return apples. So this is, you're working through an example. You should work, it's easiest to work through an example this way. And you should also work on multiple examples. Like they usually give you an example, but you should come up with edge cases. Like what if it's an empty, this empty input? What if the input is all the same? What if the input is all different? Like how do you deal with this? So they should work with edge cases that way. So after that, you just put whatever you did to the example into your, write down your steps. So how do you work the example into the final result you're returning. So in this case, what I just did is, I just look into all the elements in my input arrays. And then first I see an apple. If it's apples in my counter, then I will, if it's not in my counter, I will put it into my counter and make it 1. And if it's in my counter, I will increment the counter. And after all that, I look at all my counter and then just return the most appeared one. So this is the writing down your possible steps. So after you've done this, this is just your pseudocode. And this is your output. So after you do this, if you do this correctly, and if you do this carefully, your job is 80% done. When you come to the actual coding part, you are just translating your plain English into actual code. In my example, so first we look through the input. That is a for loop in code. And if it's a counter, increase the count. Otherwise, set the count input to 1. This is an if-else statement, and you just have to write it. And then eventually, you have to find the most count in the counter. So here, I kind of skip ahead because I got a little bit lazy. I do not recommend to do this. You should actually hash out all your thoughts before you start to write the code. Because I see a lot of people have like 50% of the plan ready, but eventually they got stuck at the last 30% of the code and they got really confused. So really hash out your plans completely, but at the same time, you can create functions of the code that you want to write. So for example, in this case, I want to return the max count. So I just say, make a function, say, find the max. This problem is probably too easy for me to do that, but if you're doing a really long problem, you can definitely do that. Especially a lot of times, it's like a lot of like slicing the array or something. It can be very hairy and have a lot of off by 1 errors. You should definitely do that. Write down a function and say, this is what I expect it to do. Here's the input, here's the output, and then I will implement this later. It's totally acceptable, and I want to say I get away with a lot of times I get away with it. At the end, they're like, okay, well, we know you can implement it. It's okay. You don't have to do it. I definitely, it's a very great trick. Definitely do that. And also, that will make your code look a lot modular, which is a great practice for coding. So this 2 birds in 1 stone is great. So, so this is go to another part. Like you should write clean code. Sometimes it's kind of hard to write because you're writing on the whiteboard. And for example, like my counter, I probably should spell out counter, but I just say C here. And you should specify that. You should say, I want to say it's a counter, but because I don't want to write counter, I'm just gonna say it's a C. And through all these process, ask questions. We know, like we go through this as well. We know you're gonna forget some syntax. We know sometimes you just chase a rabbit hole and can't get out. Ask questions. They are there to help. They are basically your coworker for an hour. They're there to help you. They're there to find that syntax for you. And also, like sometimes when they give you feedback, like they'll say, do you want to try this or do you want to try that? They are giving you hints. They are helping you. I see people take that offensively. I'm like, dude, I'm here to help you. Like, just listen to me, But no, like some people take it seriously. Don't. just listen to them. They are definitely trying. So after that, when you're done, I see people do that a lot. When they're done, they're like, that's it. And either you are right or you're wrong. If you're right, that's great. If you're wrong, you're going to look like an ass. So test your code. So in the beginning, you do have examples. So run through the example and make sure that your code actually runs. Like, so a lot of people also like just kind of glance through it and don't like actually run through it and make sure you are going through all the steps. And this will catch all the off by one errors, a lot of null errors, and a lot of, if you're doing recursion, a lot of times your recurse never stops. So it is a good way to check that carefully. So test your edge cases. And also, you're probably going to be asked to analyze the space-time complexity. And also be careful about this one. Like, write down all the loops. Like, if you have 3 to 4 loops, write n on each side. Or if anything is maybe log n, write it down next to it and make sure you calculate it. A lot of times, a lot of people will miss, for example, if it's an if-else, and if you're trying to decide if this element is in the array. And a lot of time we'll miss that one, because that is actually all of n. Like you should, that's why, because a lot of time you kind of skip it through because it's not a for loop and you miss it. But that's definitely count as your time complexity. So definitely write it down and be careful when you calculate it. And also prepare for follow-up questions. So a lot of time, and I think a better interview question should be interactive. Because this is kind of like your project. Your project never ends. Come on, like your project never ends. You got to the little part and then comes the next update. It always never ends. So prepare for follow-up questions. It doesn't mean, it probably means you're doing very well when you're going to the next step. And it's also okay to ask upfront, like, is this the only question? It is fine, because they will tell you. So at the end, practice. This really comes down to practice. Interview is like sports. The more you do it, the better you get. For personally, like, depends on how much I care about the job. If I have an interview on, say, Friday, and I know they're gonna whiteboard me, I will probably spend Thursday night going up to HackerRank or LeetCode or cracking the code interview and just do a bunch of those. So I feel I'm worn up. So tomorrow when I get it, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. So definitely do that. And also practice as an interviewer. Like partner up with your friends, and you start to interview them. Because this is how I want to say. This is how I really get very good at interviewing. Is to see the other perspective, to see what they are looking for. Because on the other side, you definitely see, oh, he's missing that, and he's not admitting that. Why is he not admitting that? Just say, I missed this. It's totally fine. You got a totally different perspective, and this will make you a very good interview. And the last is just to be familiar. You just have to study upon it. I personally find some companies are reasonable, some companies are not. But if you really think about it, there is not really that many data structures. The basic you have to know is array, dictionary, or hash map. You probably have to know some kind of tree. And my argument for that is, even if you're a front-end developer, your DOM is actually a tree, so you should probably know how people traverse them. Yeah, just practice, and there's a lot of resource online, and the more you do it, the better you'll be. So yeah, that's all. So.
Get those from her, and I will send that out in a follow-up email.
What do you return in cases of time? If you have a list containing banana, apple, what do you return?
That would be an excellent test case. Thank you very much for your contribution. All right, so before we move on to Kelsey, who's totally going to talk to us about support engineering as the option you didn't know you had, I want to take a moment, and if you are in the room and you are here from a company that is hiring, that would like to hire some women developers, would you just raise your hand? And if you're looking to get hired, why don't you look around and identify those people who are from that are currently hiring and would like to hire you, and maybe you could go chat with them later. All right, cool. So, looks like my laptop just died. Awesome timing. So I'm going to fix that while Kelsey comes up here and gets her slides going. Come on, Kelsey. Woo!
Hi everyone. Hi. My name is Kelsey Hughes, and it's loading. Cool. Alright, so I'm here to talk to you about support engineering. But first, I would like to show you the very first website I built, which was in the year 2000. As you can see, it's really beautiful. And I built this in 5th grade with my friend Pat as part of a school project. And this is when I learned that I loved code. So this is just pure HTML and CSS. And I didn't discover code again until 10 years later when I went to school at the University of Oklahoma. Yes, I'm from Oklahoma. And I experimented with a few majors and finally found management information systems. And this is a major that combines databases, a little bit of programming, and then business knowledge. As part of that major, in my junior year, I had to learn Visual Basic and C#, and I loved these classes so much. I sat in the front row every day, which I never did that before, and I answered questions in class, and I would get up and whiteboard. It wasn't whiteboarding like CC is talking about, but I loved code, but for some reason, I didn't interview for any coding jobs. I didn't apply for them because I didn't feel like that was a job for me. I had this idea in my head that to be a coder is to be in this cubicle all day, to sit and type, and to not talk to people. And at the same time, I didn't really have any female role models in coding. We had people that would come in and talk to our class, but it was mainly older white men who worked for oil and gas companies, and I wasn't interested in that. So I decided to pursue a career in healthcare IT. I worked for a company called Cerner, who creates electronic medical records software. So this is a screenshot of their software called PowerPoint. As you can see, it's also very beautiful and really complicated. And as part of that, I started out in application support. So I was helping support the different products that we had. And then I was an implementation consultant, so that means I was working with different hospitals to set up this software. I wasn't in code for either of these jobs, but it was a lot of troubleshooting and working with clients. And then the last couple years of working on Cerner software, I was a third-party consultant. So basically, I was still working with the software, but I was employed by other companies, and you make more money that way, from what I know. So in 2017, I made friends with some coders. I was living in Philadelphia, and I was bored at work, so I started teaching myself to code again with Code Academy and Coursera. And I thought it was fun. I would code and find the solutions to problems, but I didn't really feel like I could build something myself. So if someone gave me a code editor, I would have no idea what to do. And then I found the Flatiron School, and I completed their online boot camp and graduated in August 2017. So that took me about 6 months. I worked 20 to 30 hours a week on the curriculum, and I learned Ruby on Rails and React. After I graduated, I wasn't really ready to go back into one full-time role. I was discovering all of these passions that I had, and I kind of wanted to do a little experimentation. So I was working as a coding instructor part-time. These are a few of the organizations that I worked with, and you may recognize Girls Who Code is one of the logos. I taught with them last summer in New York City, and it was one of the best things of my life. And at the same time, I started doing some freelancing. So that's me and my friend Lloyd. He hired me for one of those jobs, and then I found the other two just through networking at different meetups. I started doing a little bit of contracting work for startups. But I didn't love that because I didn't really have a team that I was working with, and I didn't have the camaraderie, and I didn't have the mentorship that I really needed, especially after graduating from a boot camp. I really wish that I would have just got a full-time job. So that's what I decided to do last year around August. And at the time, the only 3 jobs I knew about were front-end developer, back-end developer, or full-stack developer. So that's mainly what I was applying for. And I knew I wanted to come to Austin because most of my family is down here, and I was living on the East Coast. So I went on builtinaustin.com and I started applying for jobs. But I applied for one job as technical support engineer just on a whim. I'm not even sure why I applied for this. At Painboard. And I didn't want the job initially. I was thinking, okay, at least like I've worked in support before. Like I think they'll probably interview me if you practice. But what I found is that I really enjoyed the people interviewing me and the culture of the company, so I gave it a shot. You might be wondering, what is a technical support engineer? So this is the second half of my talk where I'm going to show you what it's about. So an overview of support. This is kind of what happens when engineering does a deploy and releases code into the wild. So they've got they're ready for the code to fly away. It's been tested, and there shouldn't be any problems with it. But that's not always true. And these are your support folks. So we've got your back. We are the ones who are taking care of your customers whenever code is deployed and things may not work perfectly or work as the user thinks that they should. And if your company is making software, users are going to have problems, and you need to take care of those problems and solve those problems. And that's where your support organization really comes into play. Now, there's different tiers of support. Tier 1 is frontline support. So when I was parking right before this event, I paid the meter and I was waiting for the ticket to get printed so I could stick it in my windshield. But the thing kept spinning and spinning and spinning. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do because I don't want a ticket? So I saw that you could call 311 and they would help you, so I call them and someone picks up. So that's frontline support. Frontline support has the headsets on, they're waiting for people to actively call them, and they're ready to solve your problem. But they can't always solve your problem, right? They know some solutions, or they know a lot of solutions, different types of problems, but sometimes there's an issue with the software. And those issues usually get triaged to application support. So maybe the person on 311 gave me some things to try, like hit these buttons or whatever, and if it didn't work, they would probably have to call me back, and they would contact application support. So they would contact whoever built the machine and knows how to run the software. That person might provide some solutions, or if that person can't determine a solution from what they know, they would give it to support engineering. And that's within that company that produces the software. And support engineering are the people who dig into the code to find a solution to your problem. And that's what I do. So a day in the life of a support engineer. Everyone in support works a queue. And as a support engineer, I typically think that every issue in a queue is one of 3 different types. There's bugs, enhancements, and questions. So an example of a bug would be a customer is clicking a button, but it doesn't do anything. As a support engineer, I would hunt through the code. I'm trying to figure out where the code is that executes whenever that button is clicked. I would document the steps that the user did in order to encounter this bug. And then if I have the time, I would fix the bug myself and submit a pull request or a change to the code base. Or if there's not enough time and it's an extensive project, I would log that and then triage it to the engineer team. An enhancement. So let's say that your app has a username and password login, but a user says they want to log in with Facebook button, so they log the ticket to you. First, I would find out what the user really wants. So do they really want to log in with Facebook button, or are they just bad at remembering their passwords, and maybe we can figure out a solution for them? Next, I would talk to the product manager. So a user may request something, but it may not be aligned with the direction that we want our product to go in, and so we may want to communicate that to the user. If it's something we want to do, I would document what that thing is. And if it's a small change, I might fix it myself. Otherwise, triage it to the engineering team so that they can get to it later. Questions. So a question might be, does your API have an SDK? Now, 2 years ago, I would have had no idea what this means. The good thing about working in support is that when you have issues like this in your queue, you can Google them and you can figure out what these terms mean. And it's a really safe place to do that because you have the engineering team to support you on the other end and they can explain things. So when you get questions, first you figure out the answer. But then you would improve the documentation. So why would the user not be aware of this answer? Communicate the solution. So most people like to communicate over email, but I really like to keep in mind my users and communicate over the method or over the channel that I think would be most helpful to them. So a lot of the times I'll set up a screen share or video chat with people if I feel like there's a lot of things that I need to walk through with them. A lot of people who are busy like emails, so I tend to know who the people are, and I'll send screenshots and then document it in email. This is a breakdown of the time that I think I spend on a daily basis as a support engineer. So the top bar is about 50% of my time, I would say, is troubleshooting issues. Issues meaning mostly bugs. 20% of my time is working on project work. So I have my own mini projects that I work on just for myself, and I get to spend about 20% of my time on that. The other time is spent answering questions from support, creating documentation, fixing data. So if there's bugs that produce bad data in the database, I'll have to go in and clean that up a lot of the time. And then if I can, a little bit of my time is spent coding bug fixes. So what skills do you learn as a technical support engineer? I think the most important skill that you learn in support is that you gain empathy for your users. You know the issues that they're seeing, and you can really put yourself in their shoes in order to understand the product. You get to communicate to all levels of the company. So you might work with the help desk, you might work with product, you might work with engineers, CTO, because you have to find the solution to problems. You have to go up and up the chain until you can find that solution. You learn how to read code, and you pretty much learn the entire code base, or I feel like I have at Pingboard. And not only code, but legacy code. So you see the transition of your company based on the code they used to write versus the new code. And you can kind of look for different patterns and learn what is good code and learn what code is readable to you because you're the one reading it. So then you learn what it is to write good code. You learn to prioritize. So you work in a queue of a lot of different tasks and you need to figure out which ones are affecting the most users and which ones matter the most to your users. You gain intuition. Sometimes, depending on the industry, you work under pressure. So Pingboard makes org chart software. I wouldn't say that any of those issues cause me to feel stressed or pressured, but in healthcare, I definitely felt a lot of pressure because people's lives are on the line. So where do you fit in to the engineering team? Because you are on the engineering team, but you're not writing code every day. I see a support engineer as kind of a rover. So you work with the people who identify the issues, and those people are on the right side, I think that's the right side. The customer support, sales, consulting, and third-party developers. Those are the ones identifying issues. So you're communicating with them. And you're their liaison to the engineering and product teams which are DevOps, front-end, back-end, product, etc. So what are the perks of being a support engineer over a full-time developer? Variety. I come into work every day and I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to work on. I'm constantly encountering new issues. My respects. So I was the first technical support engineer at my job, and previously they would rotate. They would do a 1-week rotation where an engineer would be the support engineer. So when I came on, everyone was relieved because they could focus on their work and give the support stuff to me. Side projects. So there are times when the queue is lower and I have some downtime, and I have my own side project at work. It's an internal tool, so I get to experiment. Like, I'm trying to learn more React right now, so that's what I'm trying to focus on my side project. But you just have time to do something that you're passionate about. You get a lot of customer interaction. As a full-time engineer, you may not get that. Small wins every day. You're tackling a lot of different things, which means you can solve a lot in one day too. And as a code newbie, you can figure out what you like and you dislike. You have the opportunity to see into all types of issues, which means that you get a glimpse into what the day is like as that type of engineer. For example, I've learned I would hate being a DevOps engineer, and I tended to gravitate towards more of the back-end things, whereas front-end kind of intimidates me, so I'm still trying to figure out what I like, but I feel like I have the opportunity to explore. So where do you go next? Maybe you don't want to be in support forever, but what are the options? I think the options are on either side of this diagram. So since you get to work with all of these people, you can try to get some of these people to mentor you, you can try to shadow them, you can have more conversations with them, and you can really see where you want to go next. Or someone who wants to be a support engineer might have some of these traits. So if this is you, I would suggest going to miltonaustin.com, search for support. There's a lot of jobs out there. And when it's time to interview, there's some red flags that you should watch out for. So these are some quick questions that you should ask. So ask what their on-call policy is, because in support, if you're on call 24/7 or you're the only person on call, that's a big red flag. If there's a rotation and you get comp time for answering a call, that's probably okay. Ask if support engineers write code. At larger corporations, I've seen that they generally do not. So depending on what you like to do, that could be a pro or a con. Ask how performance is measured. So if it's measured based on the number of issues you solved, this is a major red flag to me, because it incentivizes you to close things out as quickly as possible and not actually fix it. If you're measured off of process improvement, writing new docs, deflecting issues, that's awesome. Ask what your opportunities for mentoring are, and you have service level agreements. Service level agreements are agreements between the company and their customers on response time to their issues. This is just something to be aware of, because if they have SLAs that are very short, it could be very stressful. These are some roles we're hiring for. Come find me later. And good luck.
Next up, we're going to hear from Jenna, and she's going to tell us how to be a great candidate. Also, FYI, my awesome helper human Mo has been slowly but surely unpacking and putting out the desserts if anybody has a sweet tooth. I ordered way too much. I see I'm not the only sugar-addicted human in the room. Excellent.
Basically just spent about 9 months in San Francisco, coding 12, 14 hours a day, working on projects, doing hackathons. One of the first hackathon I did was actually an AARP and Bank of America sponsored hackathon. And it was kind of like at that moment that I saw like all of the things that I've been learning I could apply to building projects that were really important to me and that I was passionate about. It kind of started from there. So when I finished boot camp, I got really into hackathons. I worked with a team and we actually won second place at GE Minds and Machines hackathon. We were supposed to prep for it. We didn't really have time, and we just kind of wung it when we were there, and it worked out. So I was like, hey, it's not rocket science. So coding at least follows rules, whereas languages do not. So I put together basically a guide that you can all work through from start to finish, from what is coding to your first job, and to help get you there. What does working in tech look like? It can be a lot of things. We heard someone speak about support engineer, can be QA, software development, UX, UI design and development. It can also mean technical recruiting, project management, product management. There's a lot of different roles, and the more that you explore and find where your interests are, the easier it will be to explore them. And I feel like one path kind of leads you to the other. So I'm in engineering now. I also like to do a lot of diversity and inclusion events. I also like to do a lot of creative work also. So I think being open to where your career will take you is going to get you into the right position. So where do you start? So this is kind of what I've been working on to try and get a good roadmap for people to follow. So I would say do your research. So like what things interest you? How can you take something that you're interested in and find a job that it directly applies to? So are you into 3D printing? Are you into drones and robotics? Are you into smart things? There's a lot of roles within each of those areas where you can research what are the things that you need to learn to get a foot in the door, whether it's in engineering or whether it's in research. So yeah, so learning the things that you need to know to get your role, to get your dream role is definitely the hardest part. Coding boot camps are great, but they're not for everyone. Some people already have started and had an introduction to coding and technical skills. There's so much material available online. I personally could not have gotten to where I'm at without a coding boot camp. I needed that direction, I needed that structure, and most importantly, I needed mentorship. I wanted mentorship. I learned best that way. Some people are self-learners though. My husband's a graphic designer. He's learned everything on his own. My brain doesn't work that way. So as you work through this, guide, the most important thing is to focus on branding yourself as a top candidate, right? So everything you learn, apply it to something, make a project, make a to-do app, make a Twitter clone, make an Instagram clone. Find out what languages are popular and being used. If you want to learn about, if you want to get into a role of AI and machine learning, learn Python, build a project in Python, take a TensorFlow workshop. Austin is one of the cities where tech is a big part of the economy and a part of the companies. So this is a space where you have access to workshops, you have access to these kind of events. Take full advantage of that. Make sure you're putting all of your projects on GitHub. This is one place. Like GitHub is where all of your projects are. You should have good commit messages. Your projects should be clean. They should be structured well. They should be well documented. You should all have READMEs that are well documenting not just your project, but your setup, your installation. How can someone set up your project locally? How can they contribute to make it better? You're going to have to go through this code with the hiring manager if you're looking for a developer or engineering role anyway. They're going to say, show me something that you've worked on. Show me something you've worked on. For instance, they'll ask you, tell me about a project you've worked on. Show me what it is, and then they're going to say, show me what code you wrote. Show me what you worked on. Why did you write it this way? What challenges did you have? So it's good to have, I think, a few projects you've worked on in a group where you are working on your pair programming skills. You're working through challenges as a group, but also having projects you've built yourself, right? So you can show potential employer, I built this from start to finish. So I built this out, I tested it, I debugged it, I did all the commit messages. This is something that I sat down, spent the time working through and designing. Portfolio website. This is something that everyone should have. I think it's kind kind of for me personally, a later state in your progression and working on projects. I feel like once you have your projects, then you have some place to put them, right? You have a way to display them so potential employers can see not just the projects you've worked on, but learn about you. What are your interests? What's your background? What are you looking to do in tech? What are you looking to do in your career? This is the perfect place to be able to find the right employer, but let them find you, right? This is a way to show, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and let the right company and the right employer find you. Everyone hates working on their resume. It's just, if you like working on your resume, probably, I don't know what your other interests are, but resume is definitely on the bottom of my list. This is probably the one area I struggled with the most. It was like physically painful trying to work on it. So I just broke it down into just a few key things without getting too deep into it. So these are like the main keys that should be on your resume. Obviously your name, your job title, your job title, or the title that you're looking for, right? So if you're a graphic designer and you're looking for work, then you're a graphic designer. This is the work that you do, these are the skills that you have. If you're looking to go into engineering or you're looking to be an app developer, you're an app developer. That's the role. Whatever you put on your resume is what somebody's going to hire you as. Obviously your contact information, this is a good place to put your portfolio links, GitHub, your LinkedIn. I like to put like a summary, like something that can tell a company or a hiring manager a little bit about you. Why are you a great candidate? Why are you a great addition to any company? I like to break down and highlight your skills. So if they're looking for, we need someone that knows React. We need someone that has worked with TensorFlow. You want those things to be front and center so they can see that you have those skills and automatically put you aside with, okay, these are the people that have the technical skills. Now let's look at the rest of their information and see if you're a good fit. I like to put projects on there, like your top projects, summary about them, link to the GitHub or wherever you have them hosted, and what you built them in, why you built them, education, and then employment, and then any organizations you're a part of. So this was my resume. This is my resume. So this is an example of a horrible resume. Like, don't do this. This is like, first of all, it's like, okay, what do you know? Because there's so many bullet points and like, what technical skills what languages do I know? So it's not one page. It's starting with education, which isn't helpful for anybody. And an employer has to spend a lot of time reading through all of this junk just to figure out, like, okay, where are my projects and where am I showing my skills? Like, where can they see what I actually can do? Like, what I'm doing day to day is not helpful for anybody to know what skills I have that are going to benefit their company in that position. So, some red flags: spelling and grammar. If you have bad spelling and grammar mistakes, they're probably just going to throw it out. Like, if you can't spend the time editing your resume, then that's gonna, to them, they're gonna think, well, if they're not gonna take time on their own resume, they're probably gonna skip over important details at work too. Behavioral questions, obviously that's a way that they want to screen and make sure you're a good candidate. Important, make sure your story aligns with your resume, and spend time rehearsing it. Practice it with someone. The more you practice it, the better it'll be, because they're going to be looking at your resume while they're talking to you. So if your story is not aligning, then they're going to wonder, do you really have this experience? Is this really going to be a good fit? And kind of have some questions that you don't want them to have. So this is the final product of a lot of hours spent on a resume. So why is this good though? So number one, it's one page, right? It needs to be on one page. So average, well, 6 seconds. I use 6 to 7 seconds recruiters spend on a resume. So it needs to be visibly giving them the information they need at a glance. So I have my skills, so they can see, okay, we're looking for React. React is their pool. Docker's their pool. Python's their pool. Let's put this aside and look deeper into this later. It also follows the 1/3 rule. So your information and your skills should be about 1/3, your projects should be about 1/3, and your education and employment should be about 1/3. So summary, skills, projects. So this is giving a really good representation of all of your skills as a candidate and kind of hitting the main points we're looking for. These are some resources. You'll get these when I send this out. Your LinkedIn should match your resume. If your LinkedIn is like vastly different than your resume, they're going to be like, okay, you're just not updating your resume. Are you putting jobs on your LinkedIn that aren't really your jobs? Or, what am I supposed to look at? What's accurate? So they should be pretty cohesive and matching. Networking is like the most important part of getting a job. You should be active in meetups. You should be active in volunteering in organizations that are important to you. You're going to find your next job through someone that you've connected with. That's how it works. It's going to continue working that way. So that's, again, why it's so important, especially to have your online presence be a good representation of who you are. Because when you reach out to someone that you've connected with, they're going to see right off the bat, number one, is it your picture? Okay, I remember this person. If not, they can at least see, like, okay, they're part of this organization that I went to, or these are the types of things that they're interested in. Like, let's continue this conversation. Cold and warm outreach, that goes along with networking. Very important. This is how you're going to get your job. Either cold outreaching to someone or warm outreaching to someone that you've met at an event like this. I wrote down the interview process. You guys can look at this when I send it out. These are like the main points of as extensive as your process can be. Some red flags to watch out for. If they're pushing the salary conversation up front, like that, you don't even know if you want to work there. You don't even know if it'll be a good fit, and neither do they. So that's not something that should be pushing up front. Also, the company and team demographic. Are there women that work on these teams? Are there diverse candidates that work on these teams? Is this a place that will be supportive of you and your needs and your growth in your career? Also, how long have people been there? So when I interviewed at IBM, I interviewed with 3 people. One of them had been there 6 months. One of them had been there 28 years, and the other one had been there 33 years. So I was like, wow, this is a company that obviously is providing for them the work-life, integration that they're looking for. It's flexible with them. They enjoy their work because they could leave, and they've decided to stay for some type of reason. So that's made me want to learn more. And if they're not excited about you, there are way more of you than there are way more positions than there are candidates to fill them. 1 million jobs go unfilled every year because they can't find candidates, right? Because they aren't looking and don't know how to do it properly, right? So if they're not excited about you, there's 100 other companies that will be. So here's some resources. Here's my interview prep resources, coding challenge resources, some resources on interview. Okay, yeah. And here's a link to the survey. So you give me data, I give you all this stuff. That's how it works. But yeah.
workshop day on this topic in Detroit, so if it seemed like she had a little much content, that's because she totally has a lot of content. She's like basically teaching the entire like workshop day of this in Detroit here soon, next week actually. So that was amazing. Thank you so much, Jenna. All right, so I didn't realize how much content y'all had. So the first time I ran this event, it was purely by accident. What happened was I have a friend named Gabby. She works with Google Cloud, and she was going to come to Seattle, which is where I live, and she was going to give a talk. And so I put together this event, and I had like 100 RSVPs. And then the week before, her mother-in-law died. Yeah, that's all commitments automatically broken, no hard feelings ever for any reason. But I had 100 RSVPs, and I'm just like, do I cancel the event a week out, or do I just throw something together? And so I threw something together based on the feedback that I'd gotten from the community as to what they needed, what was missing in their life between them and getting the job that they wanted. And so I put together this talk, and it was 50 minutes originally, and then I cut it down for this event that I threw in Seattle last week, that I actually had more than a week to plan for. And that run time was 36 minutes. Now I've cut it down again. Let's see how we do. Starting off, I work at a company called Twilio. We make communications APIs, basically any form of communication that is not in meet space face-to-face. We have an API to make that super easy for you to add to your application. We've been making APIs for like 10 years now, so there's way more to it than you could have the patience for me to stand up here explaining. So I'm going to encourage you all to go to twilio.com/quest to check out the world's coolest way to learn tech things, which is an 8-bit style gamification of microtutorials, so you can earn experience points and leveling up. In every corner of my slides, you will see this. This is my Twitter handle. If you happen to tweet about this event, I would really love it if you would tag me in it so that I could see those. I live on the internet, so like an internet-based attention is like how I get my self-esteem. And the other side of every slide, you will see this. This URL is where you can go give me feedback on this event, and also tell me what kind of events you would find valuable in the future. So maybe we could do more fun things together. Also, as part of that feedback form, you can tell me which of the awesome prizes I brought you would like, and I will raffle those out and announce who got those at the end of the evening tonight. So this is in the corner of every slide, but like research.net/r/get-hired-f-austin. Please fill that out. Thank you. All right, so. Oh crap, this isn't showing me my notes. Oh, what? Mouse. Okay, we're gonna try this again. Using somebody else's laptop, and I really probably should have taken a look at this before we were doing this thing so that I could see my speaker notes, which is really important to me, like fish out of water right now. All right, how about everybody get to start? And I'm gonna fix this situation. 1 second. No, I did not run out of battery, and this is not my laptop. This is somebody else's laptop. It's busy doing the live captioning, yes.
They're just doing a fantastic job.
Oh, it is separate.
Correct, and it takes a lot.
It's not mirroring.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Software engineer. Thank you. And you guys, you know me? Like you know me? It's
we're good now. I got my speaker notes back. Now I don't have to die in a puddle of, oh my god. That's too short. I'm going to hurt my back if I keep leaning over like that. All right, so what this talk is going to cover is 3 things. I have 3 sections, and we're going to go through them. And I'm going to try and go through them relatively quickly because we have already used up most of our talk time, but I'm also going to try and not go through them too quickly because I've been told that I talk so fast that people cannot understand the words that I'm saying. So I'm going to try and not do that. All right, so this talk is going to hit on philosophy, skills, and community because I think those are the 3 main topics that you need to tackle in order to survive and thrive in the job hunting process. Could you please take your conversation outside? Thanks so much. All right, so section 1, philosophy. What is it? The malleable, evolving context in which we do our thinking and which largely determines what we think about and what we care about. Philosophy is our internal map of what is. A framework, you might say. Pretty much any recommended standard or design pattern is a philosophy which you can learn, implement, and by thoughtful practice, make your own. Why do we care about philosophy? In a word, burnout. Misology is the hatred of reasoning, the revulsion of or distrust of logical debate, argumentation, or the Socratic method, and it is one of the flavors of burnout. And Immanuel Kant, who is like my big heart philosopher dude, he says that this usually springs from an emptiness of scientific attainment, or those whose diligent pursuit of science provides no satisfaction. So basically what I'm saying here is that you can be a 10x rock star ninja code hero of doom, but if you don't have a coherent philosophy providing a consistent framework to guide your decisions, illuminating insights in your work and its connection to the world, eventually all that caffeine and sugar and anxiety-fueled energy will wind down because you're racking up technical debt in your mind. So the work you do, the excellence you pursue, the professional career you cultivate, if you don't have a philosophical framework that allows you to make consistent judgments about what's good and valuable to you, it won't be. That's burnout, and it's miserable, and it's why people leave the tech industry. So let's talk about philosophy for a minute. All right, so horizons of understanding. When we are born, our horizon of understanding is what are words even? We have this massive chaos stream of input, and in that torrent of, oh my god, what the fuck? Our only available actions are to pay attention to something in that chaos, or to intend to do something with our meat robot. If you've ever hung out with an infant, you can watch them striving to hit level 1 attention and level 1 intention, and it's kind of great. They're trying to pay attention, and they're trying to do things, and at first they're just super bad at it. But that's the whole game to them, so they keep working at it, and they get better. So their nascent attention skills allow them to start pattern matching. Their experiments with intention allow them to affect the data they're getting. As they do this work, the torrent of data streaming in becomes less bewildering, and they become more confident. And every time we find ourselves experiencing something truly new, it's kind of like this. So, for example, tackling a new language or learning a new framework, it's a whole lot of new, and that can be bewildering. When you try to do stuff, the results are very rarely what you intended, but over time you start to recognize patterns. We learn where the new framework keeps our familiar tools like routing or controllers or models. We see here the new language that we're learning has this package manager, so this over here is how we end a line, and here are the available loops. Maybe arrays and objects are handled a bit differently than we're used to. Maybe the terminology is unfamiliar, but we find the patterns and we incorporate them into our existing picture of the universe, and it stops being bewildering. Our confidence in the new terrain grows as we map it. So every mind has its own horizon as dictated by the individuality of its powers and standpoint. That really difficult to say sentence is brought to you by a translation of Immanuel Kant. Yeah, he's a little bit opaque, but whatever. He's got good ideas in there somewhere. All of conscious existence is an endless series of guess and check. It's a skill you've been building your entire life. The first step of that process is determining what's inside or outside of your problem space, and horizons of understanding are the inverse boundary. It describes what's inside or outside of your potential answer space. Having a grasp on what you don't or can't know is super useful. It lets you focus on the answers that are possible for you to find and lets you know when to seek out answers from someone or somewhere else.
This is why diverse teams that communicate well and can be a little bit vulnerable with each other solve problems more effectively. Their collaboration benefits from each of their varied answer spaces. All right, here's another one from Kant. Brace yourself. An external touchstone of truth is the comparison of our own judgment with those of others, because what is subjective will not dwell in others alike, thus semblance can be cleared up by comparison. We all followed that, right? All right, so basically what Kant is saying is that to check yourself before you rickety wreck yourself, it's a really good idea to just run things by other people, because while you might lead yourself down a nonsense path, you're very unlikely to accidentally lead a bunch of different people down the same nonsense path. So we just compare what we think is right with what other people think is right on the same subject, and we're a lot more likely to come out to like the actual truth of the matter, or at least a functional version of the truth of the matter. So keep in mind that those using the same or similar schools of thought cannot offer the same value of comparison as those whose perspective comes from outside of our thinking framework. If you went to the same boot camp as somebody else, they're probably going to be thinking along the same lines. You're probably not going to get as good of a check. But if you're talking to somebody who has a totally different background, who maybe has an expertise in the thing that you're talking about, but came to it from a different life path, they're going to see things that you're not going to see. You're going to get more benefit out of that. Conflict with others in judgment is an indication of additionally needed examination, not automatically proof of falsity, because falsity is a word. All right, so back to logic. More Kant quotes. I know you love it. It is not for general logic to investigate the source of concepts, not how concepts as presentations arise, but solely how given presentations become concepts in thinking. All right, so logic is just like a tool. Just like programming languages are a tool for getting computers to do things, logic is just a tool for evaluating our own thoughts and making sure they're not in disagreement with themselves. So logical acts include things like comparison, reflection, abstraction. These operations are essential for making presentations into concepts, but logic isn't going to tell you what's right. And pro tip, it's never told anybody else what was right either. So if anybody's ever been like, this is what is logical and therefore true, they don't know what that word means. My gift to you. All right, so let's look at a few common ways that people fail at logic. Fallacious syllogism. It's a truism that isn't true. Maybe it sounds true, maybe it's delivered with great conviction, but the fundamental premise is just like false. Like when people attempt to put forth that someone is being unreasonable by insisting on considering people's feelings. As if ignoring the human experience when humans make decisions which affect other humans makes any sense. It doesn't. All right, another one, circular proofs. These are the infinite loops of the mind. Like when people assume that they don't need to make their business accessible because they don't have any customers with accessibility concerns. I promise that you will never have customers with accessibility concerns if your business isn't accessible. All right, oh, this one's awful. The zero-sum game. Raise your hand if you know what the zero-sum game. Ah, nice, a few people up in here. All right, cool. All right, so the zero-sum game is like the antithesis of the win-win. People who believe in a zero-sum game believe that you can't get anything good without taking it away from someone else. If you find yourself interacting with people that genuinely believe in the zero-sum game, run away. Seriously. If they're trying to achieve anything, they're trying to take it from you. It's just like this awful mentality. If somebody believes in the zero-sum game, they literally believe there is no such thing as a win-win. And I'm sorry, but actual mutual support, win-win, that is the only thing that makes life not suck all the time.
Yes.
Yo. All right, so here's something that I would like to equip all of you with. I think that I might have this in common with people in this room, which is a difficulty explaining the concept of privilege to people.
Yep.
All right, and I think I've come up with the key reason why this is so hard. When you are trying to explain privilege to somebody and you just hit this brick wall of, I think it's because
like people immediately imagine that privilege is on this one spectrum where on one end is all money, no problems, all day. And then on the other side of the spectrum is working hard, persevering. This is not how privilege works. So I find that I get a lot more traction if I reframe the discussion of privilege as something that I like to call the hard to, oh my god, what the fuck, zombies are eating my face scale of privilege. So on one side of this scale of privilege, the most privileged side of the scale, maximum privilege, when you have it, life is still brutally difficult. Spoiler alert. All right, so the universe will still be chaotic and punishing and outside of your control. People you count on will sometimes betray your trust. People you love will still die. And you will still be wrong, and there will be consequences, and no amount of privilege will allow you to escape. That's maximum positive privilege. And then there's the other side, where the maximally marginalized live, where they have to deal with all of that stuff, but also literally none of their hierarchies of needs are reliably met, and also they're afflicted with exploitation and horror without respite. How far in this direction the spectrum goes is completely unacceptable. Reframing in this way helps people to understand that needing them to leverage their privilege to dismantle oppressive systems in no way discredits the incredible difficult work that they have done to achieve any success in what is an endlessly brutal, chaotic reality. Because that's the real spectrum of privilege. Really fucking hard for the most privileged on one side, and horrific beyond words for the most marginalized on the other, and we all benefit from dragging the awful lower end up. Takeaways. You do not know the perfect way to go about anything, and no one does or ever will, because there is no such thing. The best you can reasonably do...
Oh my god.
Hello? All right, ignoring that now. The best you can reasonably do is the best you can reasonably do, which will always be constrained by the limitations of the moment, which are bound to change, because refactoring is forever. Being methodical in thought and in presentation are separate acts. Do both. Questioning, answering, taking in new information, investigating, reflecting, methodically ordering one's thoughts, communicating ideas with others, and accepting their feedback as useful data, all of these things are required elements in logical, philosophical thought and judgment, which is as close as any of us can ever come to being correct. Talk over. Be respectful of your constraints when making decisions. Give yourself reasonable grace, and keep in mind that those constraints can and will change in time, which will allow you to make different and hopefully better decisions by the standards of your philosophy. You've got this. Part 2, skills! All right, so now that we've faced down the impossibility of perfect knowledge, because that was the point of chapter 1, our need for a philosophical framework to use to make and evaluate our decisions, we are ready to look at the skills you need to get you hired. Top of my list, Git. It's almost universally useful if you make code. The tech skills essential beyond that are a lot more dependent on your technical area of focus. You'll need to determine for yourself what the fundamentals for your particular area of tech are at the moment. What has worked for me in this has amounted to a bit of internet stalking and a sprinkling of hero worship. Find the people in the area of tech that you want to be proficient in, who you think are smart, and whose work you respect. Find out what skills and which people they think are important in your field, then find out what those people think. When you start to see patterns, make your judgment calls as to what things are most useful and learn those things. If you're into interactive front-end work, you might land on React and therefore also JavaScript. Remember to look for fundamentals. If you're into site reliability engineering, you might find that tooling around structured logs and observability into request paths are key, but also that you need Linux command line skills to successfully master those tools. If it's machine learning that you're after, you might need to jump down the rabbit hole that is functional languages, because tech is vast. There are no wrong paths, but if you don't make some choices and pursue a finite set of goals, you'll find that you're not on any path at all. All right, so you've got some tech skills down, and it's time to find a job. Stop. It's time for expectations management. Interviewing for jobs is a full-time job. Don't get your heart set on a particular opportunity or an imagined timeline on which you plan to secure a job.
Being too focused on the end result will make you miserable. It will use up your internal resources, which you need, and put you at a disadvantage when evaluating and negotiating offers. You interview now. It's what you do. It's your job. If you have to work another job to pay the bills while this is happening, then interviewing is your second job. Treat it like it's forever. It's the skill set that you're training now. So, the main skills during these periods in which interviewing is your primary job include presenting yourself passively, presenting yourself actively, and evaluating opportunities. Your resume and how you interact with people who are not directly interviewing you are the primary ways that you passively present yourself to hiring managers. Resume formatting is both art and skill. Find people in your circles who are good at this and willing to review your resume and provide suggestions. Take them up on it. Get as much feedback as you are confident that you can evaluate and take on. Key things to remember are your name and contact information should be on every page. The header and the footer are great for this. Surface key skills clearly at the top of the first page. Don't include jobs which have nothing to do with your tech pursuits if you have any other work experience to show, and keep it to 2 pages or less. When interacting with humans peripheral to your interviews, such as HR humans, reception staff, security, even servers at a restaurant, be respectful and kind. Your ability to be a positive member of an organization is absolutely one of the things any hiring manager worth their salt will be evaluating. If they don't care how you treat other people, I promise you do not want to work with them. Alright, so actually talking to people is the active presentation bit. Don't try to force confidence you don't feel. It will come across as inauthentic, and there are inherent biases against femme humans using common masculine confidence behaviors. Instead, be confident in what you know, in your ability to learn, in your ability to communicate, and be ready to adapt to what the interview brings. If you want to improve how you're speaking or holding yourself or how you're behaving, take opportunities to practice with others. Watch yourself in a mirror and or record yourself and listen and watch for specific things you want to work on, and then watch to check that progress. And treat each and every interview as another opportunity to learn and improve. Even if within 5 minutes of being at a place for an interview, you're like, oh wow, this is so toxic. Why am I here? You're here for practice. Even if you would never take that job in a million years, go ahead and go through the process, get that experience under your belt. It's going to benefit you. All right, so the final piece of active presentation skill is interviewing back. But to do that, you need some skills for evaluating opportunities. Understand the differences in types of getting hired. Is this going to challenge me to grow my tech skills? Is this a way to get tech industry experience on my CV, resume? Is this a great team? Is this going to get me essential benefits that I and my family need? Is there someone I really want to work with there? Are there red flags that this role might be unpleasant or even dangerous for me? How long could I see myself in this role or at this company? All of these are valid reasons to pursue or not to pursue a role, but you're able to evaluate roles differently when you understand why you might take or reject an offer. So know your must-haves for each role that you are presenting yourself to, and use your interviews to ask about those must-haves. And remember, if you find yourself in a role and you're wondering whether or not you should be looking to change, don't fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy. A job is not automatically worth more just because it has cost you so much and you've invested so much into it. Part 3, community, as in, what's happening right here? Welcome. Welcome to the revolution, and thank you for coming. FYI, you are in fact the revolution that you've been waiting for. Thanks. So your communities are your relationships. Every community that you are in centers around you because your community is your relationships. That means that you have all of the power, which means that you have all of the responsibility, and the goal of this section is to empower you to do that intentionally and to make those communities good. All right, so briefly, what are some payoffs of tending these communities intentionally? And by these, I mean tech communities, relationships with people in the tech industry. Why bother? So raise your hand if you know what rubber ducking is. Okay, not everyone. So I've also heard this called confessional debugging. It's where you figure out the answer to your question by explaining it to somebody. And yes, you can do this with an inanimate object, like a rubber duck. That's why the name. Also, I guess because rubber ducks are bouncy? But I often find that like I explain problems better and therefore jump to better answers if I am explaining the problem to somebody that has a shared vocabulary with me, which is why it's better to have somebody in your industry to talk through problems with rather than just your cat. Not that your cat's not useful, it's just not the same level of useful. And then of course there's tech support, like for those problems where you finish explaining it and you're like, I still got no clue. It's nice to have people who like are invested in you and therefore want to jump in and like help you out. And by the way, I did not realize this before I met the tech community at like 30. I really had no idea tech community was even a thing. But it is, and there are all sorts of people that are totally down to help you figure out your problems, even if they don't work with you and have no like, I don't know, financial gain to get out of it. They like you, they think tech problems are interesting, and they like you and want to help. Also fun stuff. My favorite conferences, Bang Bang Con and Strange Loop, I only found out about because like people that I am connected to in the tech industry told me about it. Also, I get invitations when folks are in my town or if I'm visiting their town, and that's super fun. And you get to find out about people's personal projects and specialties and toys they have or want. This is how I've learned all sorts of cool stuff about like distributed systems and blues dancing and databases and hardware hacking. Also, it is way easier to find out about amazing opportunities through people that you know than on any website. There's no website that is going to give you as good of information about things like who's hiring, who's looking to be hired, when awesome CFPs are open, meetups, events, open source projects that need leadership or volunteers. People you know, they're going to give you the best data on stuff like this. Also, industry insights like salary feedback, standard operating procedures, the Whisper Network. Raise your hand if you know what the Whisper Network is. You guys aren't on the Whisper Network? I'm kidding, it's not an official thing. So the Whisper Network is actually just like a colloquialism for the information that you will get from other people that they're not going to broadcast loudly and publicly. Things like bosses who are toxic, things like conferences you don't want to go to because they don't actually enforce their code of conduct, things that you do not want to have to learn through experiences. You want to be tapped into a community of people that are going to give you a heads up on that stuff. And of course, perspective. Have y'all heard like the joke about like the blind monks and each of them is touching a different part of the elephant and so they each think an elephant is a different thing? Okay, so it's kind of like that. We work on tech projects which tend to be really ridiculously big and complicated, and so having a bunch of different people who will all give you their perspective on what they are seeing is going to give you a much better like 360-degree perspective on what you were even working on. Oh, and you'll also find out cool things like books and languages and techniques and search terms. That was one of the first takeaways that I ever had when I went to my first tech conference. I went home and I was just like, I now know all of the things I should have been Google searching that I had no idea before. And I accelerated my learning like a bajillion fold because suddenly I knew the key search terms that I needed to find the information I wanted to find. It seems silly, but it's important. And of course, inspiration. If you're connected to creative, interesting people, then they're going to talk to you, and that's going to get your creative juices flowing. You're going to be inspired. You're going to do cooler stuff because these awesome conversations that you're having with people. And to wrap up, what's amazing about having an intentional tech community is the most overlooked benefit is the actual relationships themselves. Like seriously, all of my best friends I met through the tech community, and yes, maybe that says something sad about me, but also they are amazing human beings. All right, so how do we grow that community now that I've totally sold all of you on this concept? Well, the first thing is recognizing and being open to growth connections. And that involves, I would say, like, the biggest tip I can give you for that is not to chase after like people that you perceive as rock stars. People who are already speaking in front of big conferences and people who have already published your like favorite library or whatever, they probably have like a lot of demands on their time. They probably don't have a lot of time and energy to be making new relationships. But pro tip, if you make relationships of mutual support with people, those relationships of mutual support are going to catapult y'all to the top of your industry, and then you are the leaders and rock stars of tomorrow. So invest with people on the ground floor and support each other, and y'all will be amazing. Okay, raise your hand if you know what the Pac-Man rule is. Pac-Man rule. You do know what Pac-Man is, right? I haven't aged off the planet yet. Okay.
just checking. The Pac-Man rule is this really handy way of remembering this trick at events where you're going to end up chatting with people. You know how people tend to like circle up into a conversation? The Pac-Man rule just says like leave a mouth open in that circle so a new person can walk up. And then when a new person does walk up, you just like adjust the circle and there's a new Pac-Man mouth so that there's always room for one more person to walk up and join. And I know it sounds super silly, but it totally works. Also, in those moments where you do end up just randomly being next to somebody that you consider a rock star, pro tip, just have a normal conversation with them. Just treat them with respect and like a human being. Don't be like me the first time that happened and just like fangirl all over them, because like, pro tip, that doesn't leave them anywhere to go with the conversation. You're just like, you're amazing. They're like, okay, thanks. Yeah, so yeah, don't be mean. All right, so the other big part of growing your community is avoiding toxic connections. Because people that have issues with narcissism, bigotry, that treat people in a derogatory manner, they're going to drive people away from you if you allow them to be near you. So you really need to create distance from people that are icky. And I don't mean icky in any sort of like physical world sense, like, yeah, no, because I'm a giant sloth. But I mean like people who are icky, like they are going to make other people miserable, because then you don't get all of the awesome growth connections because you're standing next to a human being that is like a wasp's nest. Don't do that. Okay, so now you have your community and you want to make sure that it thrives and it stays strong, and that involves understanding how trust works. So I highly recommend that you check out this really cool visual aid to understanding elements of game theory called The Evolution of Trust. And so to sum up, there are 3 main ways that people interact on when it comes to trust interactions. There are people who always cooperate no matter what. There are people who always try and cheat and get the upper hand no matter what. And then there are people who are like doing to others. Like they're going to start off being cooperative, but then they're just going to treat you how you treat them. That must be good. So the thing to understand about that is that people who have the do unto others philosophy around trust, that form of philosophy, that approach to trust really does win out in communities over time. However, if all of your interactions are first-time interactions, the cheaters always win. And the other thing to note is that if you're an always cooperates kind of human, you're facilitating the cheaters. That's why not to do it. I know it seems like super good aligned and awesome, but the fact of the matter is, if you are always cooperating, that means that you're cooperating with people that are trying to take advantage of other people, and it's important to use your judgment to not do that. All right, so trust is built from repeated interactions. So if you don't build long-term relationships, the cheaters win, and always cooperating benefits cheaters, and don't be Charlie Brown. All right, so another great way to tend your communities is to keep an eye out for really powerful, thoughtful interactions. On the slide here, you will see my friends Corey and Tessa, and I'm the one taking the picture, and this picture is being taken in the downtown Seattle youth care shelter kitchen. Because one year, Tessa, like, DM'd me on the Twitter, she's like, guess what you're getting for Christmas? I'm like, I don't know, puppy? And she's like, no, I'm putting together a team, and we are feeding the youth care shelter, because she knows that youth care is my jam. They are where I give all of my money and all of my time. They run all of the youth shelters in the Seattle area. They have programs that just don't exist nearly enough. They have programs for youth of color. They have programs for LGBTQ youth. We're talking about demographics that are wildly underserved, desperately in need, and I found this one organization that's out there doing the good work, and so I backed them, and people that know me know this about me, and so Tessa and Corey were just like, we are here for you. And this was like 3 years ago. I am never gonna stop being on about this because it was so meaningful to me. And that's what I mean about like keeping an eye out for potential like thoughtful interactions that you can have with people that you're wanting to deepen your relationship with. There might be something that's very trivial to you that's gonna mean the world to them. And that's an amazing opportunity to really deepen and strengthen that relationship. Does this mean that I am saying that you have to be best friends with literally everyone? No. No one's got that time. I want to let you know that there are primary, secondary, and tertiary relationships, and they're all valuable. They're all important, and they're fluid. Somebody who's your bestie this year might be somebody that you check in with every few months next year, and that's fine. That's okay.
they're not going to feel mistreated by that. Because your investments that you've made in that individual, they're going to last. Even as the connection goes from primary to secondary to tertiary and back again, they're going to remember all the cool stuff that y'all have done together and that you've done for them. And so they're still going to have all of those warm, fuzzy feelings inside, even if you don't have time for them, like literally every day. It's fine. So how can you contribute that aren't always being everybody's best friend? Well, there are things like, if you want to be a part of a open source community, you can give back code. You can also give back docs. You can also triage issues. You can also answer questions, moderate forums, maintain repos. You can also, outside the open source community or inside, whatever, these are all options, you can also get into like mentorship and speaking and organizing, be somebody's rubber duck, offer somebody tech support, volunteer. These are all totally valid ways to build your community and to nurture the community that you have built. All right, so another important part of tending your community is figuring out where the social contracts that you've created, the expectations that everybody in your community has for how we're gonna act and how we're gonna treat each other, when those need to be pushed in a better direction. And how do we push social contracts? Well, it involves a lot of listening and a lot of consensus building, because you need to kind of get everybody on board for the new, more positive direction that you're kind of leaning in. All right, so how are we going to do this? How are we going to figure out when our social contracts need to be modified? We're going to identify missing perspectives. We're going to find those people, and then we're going to listen, and we're going to lurk, and we're going to Google, and we're going to read, and then when we feel like we have like a foundation of informed knowledge, then we are going to take action. We're going to push that social contract. We're going to listen to people that are in our group, and we're going to build consensus about how we would really benefit from having more perspectives in that group. So how do we bring people into this Pac-Man mouth that we've created in our communities when we've got everybody on board that, yeah, we need to expand our community to include more cool people? Well, you can create shared experiences, because the thing about shared experiences is it's this thing called mirroring. So like if you do something at the same time as somebody else, you build empathy with them. So every time you can like make something more inclusive, bring more people in, all of those people that you manage to bring in are going to be building empathy with each other, and that's you nurturing your community. Okay. So identify areas where you have privilege and use that privilege to lift others up. This is a totally valid form of networking. When others use their privilege to lift you up, it's your responsibility to maximize that opportunity, but then you can also just go ahead and be their hype person for as often as is reasonable, and this is also a totally valid form of networking. All right, so remember how I was saying earlier that like your bestie this year might be somebody you can only check in with like once a month next year? That's because as your feedback needs changed, the people that you're investing the most of your time in also should change. This is normal and healthy and cool. So why might your feedback needs change? Well, maybe you're switching languages. Maybe you're having a new focus on tech. Maybe you were a site reliability engineer last year, but now you're just really in love with React. And maybe you relocated. Maybe you used to live across the country, and if you keep spending all your time with your friends across the country, you're not gonna make new friends in your new location. Maybe your personal needs have changed. Maybe you had a new baby. Maybe your physical health needs more of your attention. Maybe your mental health needs more of your attention. Maybe a kid just started school and now you need to spend a bunch of time in PTA. People are gonna understand, because the thing is, your community is you. It's not your current knowledge. It's not your ambitions. It's not the company you work for, and it's not your job title. It's you, and you've got this. So here's what I'd like you to try and do at this event right now. Pac-Man rule. Identify and abide by social contracts. Ask people about their interests. Listen more than you talk. Defer in conversation to marginalized voices on purpose because it benefits everybody. Take opportunities to share experiences and include others. Next time you're alone, maybe tonight, I would very much appreciate it if you would think about your current community. Identify relationships you want to invest more in. Identify toxic relationships you want to work on or create space from. Identify missing perspectives. Think about the current social contracts in your life and potential improvements. Decide to approach growing and tending your community with intentionality. It's dangerous to go alone, but you're not alone. Even if you don't have your tech squad yet, you're in the right place doing the right things. Create and build relationships. Take them with you. Grow, prune, nurture your communities. It's the best gear you are ever going to get. Thank you. So now we're going to take a quick break, like 5-10 minutes max, and then I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to announce the names of our mentors, and I'm going to match you up with the mentors you signed up with, and then we're going to break into mentorship groups, and we're going to have a great time. Don't forget to eat all the food. I ordered way too much. It's great. That is not a speech-to-text app. That is a woman named Mirabai, who is in New York City, who is live captioning this event. I know, because that's so much better than any software could possibly do. Yeah, I know. Now, Twilio does have a speech-to-text API. We do, we definitely do. However, is this as good as Mirabai? No, it's not. Yeah, she is. She is fantastic. You were quite right.
That's about that. I was just gonna go tend to the food, but I
Do
figured
it.
I'd check in.
I'm good for right now.
I think it's just that you and I needed it because I wasn't understanding the why. Yeah, so even though burning out. Yeah, like I still was again. I'm going to so sweet. Yeah, I took down the website. I had gone to the bathroom, but I came back just in time when you said, please take the survey. And so that was right before you started presenting. So I thought it was really cool. It makes sense now because I wasn't used to it. That was pure automation. And I hit a wall in 6 months. And then I hated it. But I was like, this is the work that I'm hating. What am I hating exactly? And I looked at my 4 years prior. I was like, okay, I miss working with data. Except I don't like data anymore. But I didn't know why. So it's that the meaning of this. I don't really yeah.
Some ability to connect it to your values, just like the rest of the world.
I'm so stressed all the time. My client wants like
Yeah. That's how I felt. I just didn't understand where it's coming from. I never realized it. So, what's up? Yeah. I was like, I've done that already. I've done QA. Now I'm doing GTL. Which one would I apply? Exactly. I didn't always know what to do. That was the best part. And then but then I got burned out. It is true. I got burned out because I'm like, I'm over and I'm going to do my own way. As part of I love them. But I don't put that in the city. Yeah, I wasn't integrating here at all. Every weekend I was driving out.
The wave? I remember that.
And then I couldn't. For the next 2 years. Yeah. Now I can do nothing. Yeah. So, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bring me on your podcast. I mean, I Oh, okay, great.